Okay, I think we're good to go. We have to be careful. You're right, good lounge in here, and given it's been a long day and a long week and a few long weeks for some of us here at conferences all around the world, thank you for all joining me. I think most hosts of panels will say the same thing. I have the best panel of the day and I have the most interesting story, but I think backstage it was pretty obvious that we've got a lot of shared experiences in this space. And before we start talking about some of the origin stories and where we've ended up, I'll just get each of you to introduce yourself briefly and the name of the organisation and just a quick summary of what it is your organisation does. Delane, I'll start with you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Delane. I'm the APAC Managing Director of Nethermind. Nethermind is the blockchain infrastructure company whose software currently powers over 25% of Ethereum's global nodes. So by extension of that, we're one of the largest infrastructure providers in this space. Now, over the years, we've evolved. We are a company with 8 years of heritage, so we grew our business into blockchain consulting, security as well. And about a year and a half ago, we started to develop our own internal AI competencies in-house for what we foresee as really that future of which blockchain and AI intersect. And we are building towards that future. Happy to discuss more, review more in the conversation.
Thanks, Delane. Fernando.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for sticking around. I'm Fernando, President of Chainlink. Chainlink is a company that is building the TCP/IP of blockchain. We provide all the plumbing that a financial institution needs to safely transact on chain. So you don't need to worry about all the complexities of dealing with wallets, dealing with different chains. We abstract all of that, and FIs, FMIs can focus on the value proposition. Before that, I was the CEO of SBI Digital Holdings in Japan. It was a French conglomerate, so I used to be on the other side. And before that, I was a technologist and a part of the open source mafia. I don't look the part anymore with this jacket and the gray hair, but that's my background.
Terrific. Gary?
I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Terminal 3. We're based in Hong Kong. Our job is to change the way that private data is stored around the world and accessed, not transferred. So we've built an advanced cryptography oracle that connects to innumerable private data sources. And from that connection, we're able to verify data via credentials, as well as compute data across a decentralized TEE, Trusted Execution Environment Network. So the applications built on top of Terminal 3 today are primarily identity solutions, because identity really is about the verification of data across silos, across borders. We primarily serve large corporations, governments, and fully scaled blockchains.
Perfect. Howe?
Hi everyone, my name is Howe. I am founder and CEO of Tokka Labs. We are a prop trading firm based in Singapore, and we focus a lot on decentralized finance, right? To us, DeFi, decentralized finance, is the future of finance, right? And we are very excited about being able to drive it forward, right, with our collaboration with different partners, right? And to us, AI is something that's very important, right? Because trading is a very competitive space, right? So we are using AI a lot, to help us find additional edge, right? To get one leg up on our competition.
Terrific. So if I go back 18 months ago or so, it was interesting that when people spoke about blockchain, they weren't necessarily talking about AI, and I think a lot of people who found an early interest in AI thought blockchain had no real value in that conversation, it should be separated out. I think for context, Fernando, it'd be interesting, take me back a little bit in time, because I think the business that you're now significantly involved in, the history I think matters. Tell me a little bit about the robo-trading connection, because I think there's a pathway that a lot of people don't appreciate that gets you to financial services, into the blockchain space, Web3 and associated, and then moves you on to AI. Give us a little bit of that backstory as to how we got here.
Absolutely. So what got me to think about that was back in 2016. When I was at SBI, and unlike professional traders, we felt that most people don't have the bandwidth or the time to be day traders or be managing their stock portfolio every day. It's just not an option. And we felt that having AI help with that, actually managing retail investors' wealth made a lot of sense. But as we started to dig into, the state of AI back in the day, instead for DLT, I got to enjoy what I call the early mover disadvantage. AI was not quite ready. This is way before OpenAI, Anthropic, you name it. DLT itself still didn't have Chainlink to bring reliable data on chain, which is how Chainlink started. So we ended up with so-called robot advisors. There was a lot of hype around robot advisors, by the way, back in the day. Not anymore, right? Sounds like a bit almost, from the 90s. Yeah. But what we ended up doing is help retail investors choose the right ETF, or we might help them, rebalance between different ETFs. So you would run a batch job, use some machine learning. It was not called AGI or any of that back in the day. There was not active portfolio management. It was extremely manual, and the UX was underwhelming. Fast forward, 2025, you have proper AI. Some people claim that it's already AGI. I have my doubts, but it's extremely sophisticated. And now we can run proper AI agents. Not only that, such AI agents have data to more and more assets. It's not just Bitcoin, Ether, and crypto derivatives. Now we see the tier one global asset managers tokenized funds. You're seeing structured index tokenized structure notes, actively managed certificates. Not only that, the payment leg itself is there. We have cash on chain. So after almost 10 years, you have AI that is ready. And you have agents that have access to reliable data, and with the help of the likes of Chainlink, can also add privacy overlay. It can make sure that whenever a token or an asset crosses a regulatory boundary, we do the right checks. Again, we still need to be compliant. Again, it took a while, but now this kind of democratizes, right, wealth management. It is not just for those who can afford to have an account with Bank of Singapore or UBS. Now you have AI agents have access to all the data to do whatever you need to do what's best for your clients.
I'll come back to you a little bit later about sort of the bridging, because you run a business now that can't break things. So I'll come back to the fact that you have to be very careful with what you do because of where you're onboarding institutions. Delane, yours was a more crypto native business, a digital assets, a blockchain native business. You're now finding your way into institutions as well. You're sort of growing that part of your business out. It's all about the people that are involved here. Do you want to talk to me about that process for you? What does change management look like in these organizations? How are you bridging from a business that has been historically a digital native business into this? How are you finding that experience?
Mm-hmm. I think by and large, it's with every advent of new technology. I think that point where the technology companies or the innovative new emerging technology companies start to interface with institutions, is the same process, right? It's just different cycles over again. And I think for us, the way that we're approaching this is very much of a consultative approach, where we look for institutional partners that understand the future of that technology and have the gumption to want to actually drive their innovations alongside us. So we come with the technology perspective, what can be done, what is possible, and from their end, they look at what are the limitations or the restrictions, what are they trying to achieve internally, and what is that showcase project that we could do together to make it happen. And it could be sometimes really a contribution to the overall narrative of this changing industry or this new category that is being created, which is like digital assets and AI. Or it could be really about improving internal processes that they've already been thinking about for a long time, but finally the technology has caught up to the point where you can actually make it happen, right? We've seen this before with blockchain projects and POCs circa 2016, 2019, where there was this whole cycle there, and then now we've reached a new cycle where there's a renewed interest and energy and I guess investments willing to be put into such projects again. So we are really priming ourselves to be at that stage right now. And thankfully, Nethermind has had these partners and are growing more partners to do this together.
Gary, from a first principles sort of challenge, I mean, I think that one of the promises of the blockchain tech stack was that we would reimagine trust. People would be much more confident in their data being secure. It feels like that's been parked in some conversations. We're still having those conversations, but now we have the AI opportunity here, and trust is once again front and center. So it feels like we're constantly going into this first principles conversation that says, how is my data treated? Who's responsible for it? What's leakage look like? Give me a sense of what trust looks like in the AI stack.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think it goes back to this. Blockchain, and we started off by saying, because blockchain and AI, it feels like it fits together. How does it fit together? Why is it that these two industries are starting to intersect more and more? The first killer use case for blockchain has been money. I submit that the second killer use case for blockchain absolutely is AI. And actually on the flip side of that is that AI, and especially agentic AI, cannot possibly scale without blockchain. Now, why do I say that? There are a few fundamental things that artificial intelligence needs. The first thing is trusted verifiability. Now, traditional finance and all the other use cases outside of AI agents, where technically speaking, blockchain trustlessness could have benefited, the reason why the adoption has not been as accelerated as we would like to see is because centralized systems were good enough. And they're more efficient and people are already used to them, that's fine, because there's only a few sources of trust that we really cared about. In the AI agent world, those few sources of trust is now multiplied by billions. Because we have to know who every single one of these agents are, and there will be billions of agents over the course of the next few years, and we have to know what they're allowed to do. So trusted verifiability, absolutely necessary, which means blockchain has to be involved. Second is that it has to be transparent auditability. Because AI agents transact at such a velocity that any traditional way of auditing, of tracking, of tracing is just not going to work. And blockchain has to therefore be the solution for auditability. And then finally, universal access and then atomic settlement. We're talking about transactions. What AI agents are primarily going to be doing is not answering us silly questions like we're using ChatGPT to do today, but rather completely automating a bunch of operational transactions that happen on a daily basis. Anyway, so it's going to be transactions. So that universal access and atomic settlement is necessary. And again, that's where blockchain comes in. So the gap that blockchain fills for AI to scale is not a nice to have. It's an absolute requirement. And it does start, as you mentioned, with trust. We need to know who these agents are. We need to know what permissions they have. And then we need to also then protect our data, because we've already talked about the massive consumption of data that is required for AI agents to automate. And right now, we're just giving them way too much.
And maybe adding to that, someone owns that data. So someone generated regional data. So data lineage, understanding the source, the transformation, and the usage that is being made is important for those who created the content or the data in the first place. Other we're talking about, theft. So AIs need DLT, being able to do proper, again, AI data provenance tracking and lineage is critical.
We have from your perspective, I think one of the things that really grabs attention is trading. I mean, people understand that. There's all sorts of complexities in a tech stack. But when it comes to trading, they seem to understand what that involves. Where are you seeing the impact on your business? And when we talk about on-chain trading and we talk about liquidity in trading, what are you seeing? What is this opening up for you as an opportunity?
Correct. I think right now, right, the adoption of AI is still at a very early stage, right? Especially when it comes to on-chain trading. What we're seeing more is, people using AI, right, to help them, interpret intent, right? For example, you can actually tell the LLM that I want to buy something when prices are good, right? Prices are bad. What does that mean, right? The large language models are very good at doing this, right? I think we're seeing a lot of adoption on that. Another area that we see a lot of usage in is using, AI to help us, process data, right? For example, using it to do predictive analytics, right? For example, blockchain has a lot of unstructured data, right? That's not very friendly, to human analysts or traditional rule-based systems, right? But AI excels in doing these kind of things, right? When they actually look through the data, they may be able to find trends, right? We're seeing a lot of that in helping out guys, do analysis, right? It's also very good at, identifying abnormalities, right? For example, if, let's say, a hack is about to happen, right, there may be telltale signs that's not visible to the human eye, but AI is able to actually identify these kind of trends. Right. Another area that we see a lot of is it's also very popular if you see it on Twitter is sentiment analysis, right? Lots of tools over there that just cross through troves of data, right, to identify what's very useful. I think these are areas that we see a lot of adoption in. What we're seeing a little bit slower adoption in is really doing fully automated execution, because I think it's very scary, right? Because things happen very fast on the blockchain, and being financial and trading, the impact can be very huge, right? So I think right now people are still trying to work out, what kind of guardrails to do. I think there have been experiments trying to do fully automated trading, but I think for us, we're taking a more cautious approach, right? I think we're trying to see how the systems behaves, and sometimes AI can surprise you a lot, right? So I think people are trying to see what kind of guardrails can be in place before that's going to catch on more.
Sure. Fernando, brings me back to the question for you about the complexity of the business model that now presents itself. You've got so much that can be done with AI now. The sorts of things that normally individuals could do, you could track these things. You and I often speak, I think, about this subject matter, which is complexity and the velocity of these things. So tell me how you see that being unpacked from your perspective, the mobility of this information and the complexity. What's that evolution look like from a Chainlink perspective?
Yeah, just give me an example. I know it's pretty boring, but let's discuss corporate actions. Historically, CSDs, Central Security Depositories, and other FMIs, they generate and propagate corporate action data. It can be stock split, can be dividend payments, you name it. But as I said before, you are seeing the likes of Chainlink helping Deutsche Börse to bring market data on chain. Our hope is that we can bring market data from all the exchanges, all the FMIs globally on chain. Historically, you would have downstream vendors like, now it's not Reuters, LSIC data, like Bloomberg, who do some tweaking to the data, do some screening, they might add some additional metadata that is helpful for traders. And even after the LSIC data or Bloomberg, you have another second, third tier downstream vendors that made their own changes to all these corporate action data. But all of a sudden, what happens is you have corporate data from all the exchanges globally, all the CSDs for stock, bonds, you name it, and you're effectively bypassing the existing traditional value chain. Again, there's no Bloomberg there, right? There's no these second, third tier vendors helping you make sense of all of that. And there's no one single trading desk who can make sense of all of that. That's one reason that we at Chainlink, we developed a pilot with DTCC to make sense of unstructured data come from a CSD to help the consumers of that. And my thesis is that eventually it's going to be the AI agents that will take data has been, arranged properly by a separate AI agent to do the right trading decisions on behalf, of the owner of that trading agent. It can be a retail or it can be a broker dealer. Honestly, I was doing more and more data on chain. The data AI agents can be more sophisticated things, but the data itself, all the stuff that we're bringing on chain that is accessible to AI is so big that we need AI to also make sense of the data itself.
Can I stick on this theme of boring stuff that AI is going to take over?
Let's lock down boring.
But I'm going to use a boring example to illustrate the security and privacy risks of the AI agent explosion. Another very boring thing is enterprise procurement.
Wait, slow down.
I know.
Sexy.
Who wants to talk about procurement?
Who doesn't?
I don't think we recognize how large a transactional volume of procurement actually is on an annual basis around the world. Just public sector procurement is around $13 trillion of volume of exchange. Okay, private sector is really, really hard to measure, but it's at least that size, if not larger. So we're talking about altogether maybe around $30 trillion of transaction volume in something as boring as procurement that we rarely ever think about. Okay? So much of that transaction volume is going to be taken over by autonomous agents over the course of the next several years. It is actually, frankly, one of the first areas that we should expect AI agent scale to happen. Okay, so even if we're just talking about a fraction of that $30 trillion, we're still talking in the trillions of transactions, which therefore incentivizes breaches. And incentivizes what we right now know as prompt injection attacks and whatnot to get agents to pretend to be another agent who can make a purchase order and then get money transacted to them immediately and then take that money and do whatever they want with it. So the security and privacy issues with that kind of AI agent scale is very, very real. And we cannot afford to wait for the first big blow up, because the sheer size of that blow up is going to be so much larger than I think any of us can really imagine. So we have to care about the identity of agents. A lot of the stuff that Tokka Labs is working on, right, and Terminal 3, we have an entire platform, an AI governance platform just for this, to issue verifiable identities for agents, to be able to issue programmable permissions and authority, so you know that the agent you're talking to can actually make this transaction, to then secure transactional data in a third-party network so the agents do not have it in their memory and they can't actually do crap with it afterwards. And then finally, there's also delegation and auditability, which we've already talked about. All of this infrastructure, we cannot wait for regulator to say, oh, we actually need this, because by then, it may already be way too late.
Super interesting. A question, Delane, on that, we go from the kinds of words that I think in these circles we speak about enthusiastically because we see what they're solving for. Another word is governance. I mean, I think it's a conversation that's been had in the digital assets space and the crypto space for a long time. It was DAOs and governance for a long period of time. It was decentralized models and governance. When you look at the opportunity that AI presents here and cryptographic proofs and what governance could look like in this sort of world, how do you think they compare what people are used to from a governance perspective and what this potentially unlocks from a governance perspective?
Yes. So, Steve, before I answer that question, I actually want to extend on Gary's particular point, right? Because he talked about about what he's doing at with the products and solutions that he have. I would like to also express that it's actually we have to think about things not monolithically, but as an entire design space. And I want to talk about things from the Ethereum protocol perspective. That at every stage, like technology is not static; it is evolving. And even at the Ethereum level, just August of this year, there are new standards that are being created to then facilitate trustless agents and agent-to-agent payments. And these are currently being built as we speak. And they will work very synergistically depending on how organizations want to construct or compose their stack, right? Be it with Terminal trees, Chainlink, or Ethereum, the native protocol. That is the entire design space, and these are the options that technologists within companies can now tap on to build that agentic or the intersection of agent and blockchain type of future in their organization. So now I'd like to go back to answer your question. About governance. Right?
Governance is just the fact that you have tools like cryptographic proofs, and historically we say here's what we're leaning on, and I think a composition of what we're saying here, we're talking about much greater complexity, we're talking about identity, how much better a mousetrap we're building if we're using this technology.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I would say has already been mentioned by Gary, to be honest. I think the fundamentals would be about immutability, or rather what cryptographic proofs afford us, right? So it's that immutability, that independent verification, and real-time auditability. And these are three key themes that cryptography in some form or another affords in the kind of the mainframe of governance, right? So in terms of immutability, right, you are no longer, in current scenarios, it's centralized. You are at risk of someone going in and disrupting the data, corrupting the data. With blockchain or cryptographic technologies, this is something that is no longer governed by a single entity, and these are all, it's on the ledger, right? It's there, and it cannot be reversed. The other thing about independent verifiability, right? So now you could actually why I prefaced it as a design space is that now it's not just a single organization can verify that the transaction has happened. You're able to with cryptography as the base, selectively disclose some information to different different participants in the ecosystem. So let's say the regulator wants to come in and see, if this breach has happened, then there could be a kind of interface or UI that is designed as part of the stack that affords different participants to have different levels of access to the same data without fully revealing the entirety of the transaction originator's personal data, right? So that is another way that I would talk about that. And back to the third point, which I mentioned, which is real-time auditability, right? So this is also, I think, very much what Gary mentioned, and that you are able to, because these transactions happen in microseconds, right? So being able to have that on the blockchain allows you to then verify it in real time, not retroactively. Yeah, and I think that's also why IMDA and AI Verify is very interested in this problem space. Yeah.
I think we've seen the intersections, again, the issues, complicated issues we've been dealing with for a number of years in the digital assets and the crypto space. How, from your perspective, then what's next? I mean, as you're sort of developing use of these tools and you're seeing where the potential is, how and where do you envisage this going for the business that you're building out, and what sort of opportunities does it create?
Well, I always thought of AI as an enabler, right? Okay, because it allows us to do, it's a force multiplier, allows us to do a lot more things than otherwise what we could, right? Same thing as blockchain, right? It enables us to communicate with people all around the world on one network, right? Or maybe multiple networks, right? But it gives us a new space to actually collaborate. So I think this actually opens up a lot of opportunities. And the way we see is that this thing is just going to grow much faster than what anyone imagined, right? I mean, 1 year ago, we wouldn't be having this discussion, right? Because the technology wasn't there. And the fact that technology is able to grow so fast is because it's been built on what progress that was there over the last 1 year, which was built on what happened before. So you can see this snowballing effect and things moving faster and faster. So I will not be surprised, right? In, let's say, 1 year's time, we're now looking at fully autonomous systems that's actually trading, that's actually doing a lot of the portfolio optimization, that's doing a lot of, the decision, the procurements, all these things could be actually happening, right? But to me, that's an opportunity. It means that, now we can free up more time to do more important things, right? Things that we wouldn't have had the time to because we're doing boring things, right? Now that we are now freed up from these boring stuff, we can do more interesting stuff, right? But again, along the way, there will be a lot of, problems, right? Given that, these are really frontier areas that we are, just touching on for the first time, right? So I think a large part of the time that we spend internally is spent on, guardrails, right? How do we ensure that risk management is still, proper in such a setup, right? To be honest, no one has an idea, right? We collaborate with a lot of other research institutions, universities, right? AI companies, right? And every time, they give us results, it kind of blows our mind, right? The AI is actually trying to break out of the kind of controls that we've given them, surprising us, right? Positively, sometimes negatively, right? I think this is an area that we'll have to wrestle a little bit, but I'm sure, with the human ingenuity, we're all going to come out on top.
Gary, does it scare you that we'll hand this off shortly, or it's already the case that you can download Perplexity's browser and it says, I'll drive for you, and then it pops up and you wonder where it might drive you? From that perspective, does it scare you or does it excite you in equal measure?
It should be equal, but it should, right now it's unequal because all we're talking about is the excitement of what it looks like to have an agentic AI autonomous world. But it really should scare us. I feel like my responsibility over the course of the last several months has been to go meet with regulators, policymakers, business leaders, and to scare them. That's literally been my job. To talk about the scale of the problem that can exist in a very, very short amount of time. And frankly speaking, I think it's an existential crisis. But the opportunity is actually very much there for us to build an incredibly secure foundation for this. The technologies exist. We've already talked about it on this panel. It's not that the technology needs to catch up. It all exists. The policies need to catch up, and then more importantly, builders somehow have to be incentivized to actually build these kinds of platforms. Right now, these platforms are inconvenient once you build it. You don't really know who the buyer is because the foundational models, like the open AIs and Anthropics of the world, could not care less about this stuff, right? They don't want restrictions on data consumption and data capture and memory. So they're not going to be the buyers. The agent companies are largely themselves startups. So of course, privacy is going to be at the very bottom of their stack. They just need to get agents out of market and deploy those. And then at the end of the day, it's the companies that are using these agents. They don't know what it looks like to be putting in hundreds of gigabytes of private data into the memory of these agents on a daily basis. They can't compute that. Once they understand it, then hopefully, then it'll incentivize the builders to build the right foundations.
I think we've almost just about run out of time. Just a quick question for you, Fernando. If he's scaring the crap out of people, what are you doing to make them feel confident? Are you reimagining red tech for them?
Actually, what you said resonated. Because also, part of my job is scaring people about boring use cases.
Yeah.
And I really want people to be able to use AI agents to, again, make them wealthier. But that means that we need to what I call it KYA, know your agent. Why? Because I'm a Japan tax resident. Should my agent be also Japan tax resident? Because if it's holding, let's say, a tokenized private equity fund on my behalf, and I will send that to you, maybe Australia tax resident, should that be allowed to happen? Knowing that those wallets, again, are owned by tax residents from different countries. Maybe the answer is no. And if it's yes, maybe we need to put some kind of legal wrapper around it. And maybe to do the settlement, there are tax implications, right? So I think that most innovation, at least when it comes to the use of AI and DLT in the context of finance, is going to be around compliance. That's why Chainlink developed something called ACE, Automated Compliance Agent, that we are developing, with a lot of feedback from the likes of GL1, which is, initiated by the MAS. Again, the boring thing is sexy eventually.
We've got procurement, we've got compliance, we've got governance.
That's going to be the big unlock.
It's true. And so I look forward next year, I think 12 months from now, I imagine that there'll be a Tesla robot replacing me with a robot and an agentic workflow that means I'll be unnecessary.
And next year there'll be a panel titled Boring is Sexy.
I said I look forward to hosting you on that panel.
The AI agent will have made all of us much wealthier. So.
I said thank you all for your time. It said there's a lot to consider. It feels like we're at the beginning again, doing very important things, and I look forward to seeing how this progresses in the next year. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.